Hi everyone, Patricia Worby Alchemy Therapies here. It's Monday morning and time, I think, for me to update you all on what has been a very personal journey. Normally I talk about clients and client relationships and how I work with people, but the last few weeks have been really interesting and not very happy for me. Quite difficult actually, and I recorded already a video on anxiety because that's something I've suffered with all my life. It comes and goes at various times, and it seems that a session of acupuncture, which I started 3 weeks ago, has really triggered something in me. I went initially to reduce hot sweats because of my age. I have sort of menopausal nighttime sweating. And it certainly did something. It triggered my liver straight away to start releasing toxins, I think, and then the rest of my body, my gut in particular, just couldn't handle it. And I started to get symptoms of real pain and tightness and gripping sensation in my abdomen, sort of, well, higher up than my abdomen actually, in my middle, I guess I would say. And when I looked up symptoms, as you do on Google, it was suggesting that was kidneys, and that people get symptoms like that when they've got a kidney stone. So initially I was working on the idea that I might have a kidney stone that I was passing, but it didn't progress to excruciating pain, which it normally does with a kidney stone. It just stayed gripping anxiety. And it now appears maybe that I might have an infection, or I may be getting rid of something in the gut. It's unclear, and I'm waiting to have a medical appointment with my GP to find out if they can determine what's going on. Symptoms have gradually improved. Over the last 3 weeks, I've started to feel more and more myself again, but the gripping anxiety really reminded me of how difficult living with anxiety is. And I think I talked about in the first video how it's not something you control consciously. So if someone says, just stop feeling anxious, that's not how it works. It's your unconscious mind largely. And it is your viscera, your internal organs, which are communicating a sense of unease. And we know that, for instance, the gut has a huge nerve plexus, as does the heart, which communicates to the brain that something is wrong, something is wrong. There's also the vagus nerve, which is the longest nerve in the body, and that runs from the back of your brain to all your internal organs, pretty much, except the adrenals, interestingly. But that is also a communication superhighway, and it's giving your body this information, and that's being uploaded to your brain. And so anxiety is more than just a thought process, although thoughts interact with that because thoughts are energy. It is also these internal messages of fear, dread. And what it seemed to be caught up with for me, and why it was so difficult, was this fear that I'm currently going through, that my mum is nearly 86 and she is struggling with cognitive impairment. She struggles to remember things. She needs everything written down. Sometimes she struggles with conversations with people that she's known for years. And she's got increasingly isolated, and her world has got very small. And my brother and I are trying to support that, but it has been really, really difficult because I'm a good distance away from her. I can't just pop over. I'm 2 hours drive away. And so I've been very reliant on my brother, and he's been doing a lot of the work. But it's been difficult for me because I'm the daughter, I'm the girl, and I'm the younger one as well. My brother's older. So for me, it's all about responsibility, taking responsibility for her. Which, to be fair, I think I've always done in my life, even when she was well. Her health and happiness, the way she lived seemed to be my fault or my responsibility in some weird way. I think some of you already know I lost my dad when I was 19, so that shattered our family really. And my mum then had to learn how to live without him, and she wanted me to be around to sort of soften that blow. And it was just, I was 19, I wanted to get out into the world, and I chose not to go home and to actually go back to university and continue my studies, which, there's a lot of guilt around that. There's a lot of feelings that maybe if I hadn't, I'd have had a closer relationship with my mum. But the truth is, I did what I did. And actually, what we're finding now as she gets older, she's getting softer in some ways, less critical. Sometimes she'll say things which are a bit hurtful, but that's part of the cognitive decline as well. But she's generally very loving and very appreciative. And so our relationship is healing, but I'm having to disengage myself a little bit from her suffering and her gradual reduction in, ability. So this whole thing has been both a physical feeling of gripping tightness in my gut and pain and difficulty digesting and bloating, and also this gripping in my head, which has been, you are responsible, and you've got to fix it. You can imagine how that, actually plays out in a person like myself, who's always taken on too much responsibility. In terms of attachment style, I would say I am anxious ambivalent, if anybody knows what that is. Attachment styles describe the sort of relationship you've had with your parent, and it starts really early. It starts from the moment you come into the world, and it depends on how they relate to you and whether your needs get met and how you make sure that your needs get met as much as possible. So it's an adaptation, it's a coping strategy for a child. Now, hopefully, a secure attachment is where the parent, usually mum, leans in and sort of understands the child and can anticipate their needs before they become a problem. And it's a sort of mutual dance of understanding. But it's not as common, unfortunately, as you would like. It's probably only about 20 to 30% of the population and grow up that way. And when you meet someone who has a secure attachment style, you'll know, because they believe in themselves, they're confident. It's not that they don't have problems, but they believe in their ability to overcome them, and they don't worry excessively. Now, anxious ambivalent means there was a fracture of that attachment to some degree. And in my case, I think I was born with a birthmark over one side of my face, which may have caused my mum some distress and some guilt. And maybe when she gazed at her newborn little girl, she was ashamed or she was sad for me. And that disconnect has sort of played out throughout our lives. I've never felt right for her, ever. That, as I say, is healing as well. That the way I am is the way I am, and I can't change it. And I'm learning to become at peace with that. So I have this anxious ambivalent style, which means occasionally I'll lean in and I'll want support and I'll want corroboration, and then other times I'll fall back because I'm not getting what I need, and it frightens me to not get what I need, particularly as a child, obviously. As an adult, you then become anxious preoccupied, which means you think excessively, you overthink things, you worry about the worst case scenario, you hook on to what you should be doing or could be doing instead of what is. And it does lead to anxiety. It's not a nice state to be in. So that's me. So that's one coping mechanism. The opposite coping mechanism is anxious avoidant. And that's my brother. Although he wouldn't describe himself as anxious now, that when he grew up was probably his style, and he is certainly avoidant. He just says, take one day at a time, it's all fine, we'll get there. But there's also an element where when one needs to engage with stuff, he disconnects. And I guess that's what he did in his life to cope with our family situation. Children often display opposite styles. If there are 3 in the family or 4, you'll find a mixture. And there'll be different manifestations of each attachment style, of course. So it's not like you'll be identical in every way. But this is the way it works. And then what you find is that these styles tend to not leave you. So when you're an adult, the anxious avoidant becomes a sort of, distant, kind of self-contained person. They appear not to need much, but actually their needs are very deep. And so it's good to have a balance in the relationship too. So you're likely to attract the opposite coping style when you form a love relationship, because 2 avoidants together are going to be really difficult. and two ambivalents are going to be very difficult indeed. You'll just worry each other to death kind of thing. So it not only affects our childhoods, it also affects our adult relationships. And I have recorded lots of videos on this elsewhere in my channel. If you search on attachment style, you'll find plenty there. But I just wanted to sort of detail what's been happening. I am continuing with my treatment, with my acupuncture and the Chinese herbs, which, you know, many people would say, "Ooh, I feel worse, I'm going to stop." But that's modern medicine's idea that you symptom alleviate. Holistic or natural medicine says you've got to have a healing crisis before you get through the other side. But I must say it's hard to go through, and there have been moments when I've thought, oh, I don't know if I can cope with this, I don't know if I can keep going, because I'm working with people who are anxious. So my whole life is spent dealing with anxiety. If it's my own on top of other people's, then that makes it very, very stressful for me. So I'm glad that I am feeling better, and I just wanted to detail, you know, what I've done basically is I've slowed everything down, I've stopped the herbs to some degree, and then I've restarted, but really, really gently. And this is a sort of phased approach, which we now know for sensitive people, and I'm a highly sensitive person, and that's a term, I'm not inventing it, an HSP, look it up, means that you tend to be more empathetic, you absorb other people's energies, you know when you go into a room whether it's happy or sad, you kind of know you can tell what environment you're in, and that's a highly developed sensitivity to atmosphere, to nuance, to creativity. And I'm not the only one. There are many of us out there. We tend to be the artists, creatives in life, but it does mean we have to look after ourselves really, really carefully. So I am doing that. I'm also supplementing to some degree, and I'm trying to reframe my sense of responsibility for my mum and disconnect a little bit. Not because I don't care what's happening to her, but what I found was I've been living her life for her, because I've had to get very deeply involved, knowing what's happening for her on a daily basis, who's coming in, who isn't, texting, messaging the carers, you know, warning them or telling them what we need done. And there's no room in that for me, for my joy, for my life, for who I am. And so, you know, things have got to shift basically, and that's the process I'm going through. So if any of you out there are suffering anxiety right now, know that it is possible to heal it. It takes time, but it also takes the right people to guide you through. I have a great deal of luck and good fortune in that I have a lot of colleagues who understand this and are able to help me. So I'm not alone. I'm not dealing with this alone. I also have my brother who's been pretty fantastic, and my partner as well, Jill. So I'm not alone. I'm working it through. And if you are in the unfortunate situation where you are battling this alone, I would say reach out to people who understand anxiety, who don't just want to medicate you or give you supplements, but understand that it's a mind-body process. It's not only physical or mental, it's both. And you really have to approach both of these in order to come out the other side. So I hope that was helpful. I'm trying to give information from the heart here, not just from theoretical knowledge, but from a heartfelt experience, because there's a lot of people out there doing these kinds of videos, but there's very few of them have actually lived it. So well done for listening. Thank you. And if you want to get in touch, please do. Bye for now.